Hey, how you doing? My name's Richard Gamble from Eternal Wall. We're building a national landmark about Jesus. That might sound crazy, but I'm going to tell you the journey that God's taken us on and what we've learnt about prayer in that journey. So before I do that, let's get a little bit of an explainer video. Look where we are. In between the M6 and the M42, we're right next to the new HS2 route, and we're overlooked by planes going in and out of Birmingham Airport. We're in the heart of the nation, Coes Hill near Birmingham. It's got to be one of the most visible spots in the country, with 500,000 journeys going past every week. Have a guess what we're doing here. Right here, we're building a national Christian landmark. It's been a 16-year journey to get to this point, and I'm absolutely chuffed to bits to tell you we've been granted our planning permission. We're building in 2021 and we will complete late 2022. This will be a monumental piece of public art, a never-ending wall filled with stories of answered prayer. And every single brick in this construction will represent a story of hope. A story where someone has prayed to Jesus and he has answered. People will be able to discover these stories just by pointing their phone up to a brick, and their phone will light up and tell them the story that that brick represents. In doing this, we aim to make hope visible. One of the most powerful forces on the planet is hope. And no matter the circumstance, when we find hope, it gives us strength. And we're gathering these prayer stories from 600 AD all the way up to the present day to make hope visible. So take the chance to have your story be part of this historic project as well, and leave a legacy for future generations. If you have hope in Jesus, we want to hear your answered prayer story. Tell us the situation you faced, how you prayed, how you experienced Jesus answered. And then your story will be on a brick to encourage the generations to come. We've received answered prayers from Inverness, from Bournemouth, Cardiff, Birmingham, Belfast, from cities, villages and towns across the UK. And now people from all over the world are starting to share their stories with us. This will be a people's landmark, crowdsourced with hundreds of volunteers, crowd-funded with thousands of donations, and crowd-created with millions of prayer stories. It's a time to be bold about what we believe and provoke a national conversation about prayer. Please get involved, share your story, donate, and most importantly, pray. Let's tell the nation how we find hope, and let's make hope visible. I think one of the challenges with this project, or perceptions if you like, is that people think that we are proposing a transactional God. That we pray, and if we do it in a certain way or a certain form, that God will answer in the way that we want. And that's not really the case at all. This is a piece of public art for people to discuss prayer. And you know, Jeremiah 29 says, "Then you will call on me, come and pray to me, and I will listen to you." Prayer is a conversation, and I genuinely think that God is more interested in the journey than the destination. He's more interested in what we learn of him and our developing relationship with him than the answered prayer itself. And so to that end, what I'd like to do over the next 25 minutes or so is share with you just some of the things that we've learned on the journey. Because if you want to align your heart with God's heart, you have to align yourself with a focus on the journey rather than the answered prayer. And often that's a trap we fall into, isn't it? We are so focused on, please God answer this prayer, that we miss out on what he's trying to teach us in the process. So it started for me in 2004, and God gave me this vision. And the first thing that I've learned is this, that I think a catalytic moment for me was speaking out the vision. I stood in a leaders meeting and we were all asked to share our sort of dream for church, and I stood up with this crazy stupid idea of building a wall of 1 million bricks by the side of a motorway, and it raised a few eyebrows, and this guy came up to me who's got this great ability of sort of complimenting you but smacking you in the face at the same time. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, Rich," he said, "when you stood up and started talking, I thought, oh, here we go again. But that one was quite good." But there is a power, I believe. It's, you know, the word talks about faith comes from hearing, and there is a power in declaring it and then people hearing it that I believe can make a dream start to happen. It's almost, if you like, the first faith step. I know Joseph was criticised by many people that he shouldn't have spoken the dream to the brothers. I'm not sure about that. You know, people say he's got this timing wrong. I'm not sure. I think that his speaking of the dream started a catalyst of events. And that was the same for me in this wonderful journey of building Eternal Wall. So the second phase in the journey, I sort of covered by the limitations of God. It lasted 10 years. And in those 10 years, I'm thinking about it, praying about it. I'd love to tell you that that was every day. I probably went months without thinking about it. But it was just on and off, on and off, on and off. And you learn in that the timing of God. And I remember situations happen. I was chaplain of Leicester City, and suddenly the whole environment changed for me and became very, very difficult. And at that time I'm praying against the powers and principalities that are, you know, stopping me doing God's work in the club. I look back on it now, and actually I believe it was God's limitation to get my attention. And roll forward a few more years, and there I am, and I'm running Sports Chaplaincy UK, this charity, and we've just got it into a good financial position. And I suppose in my heart, if I'm really honest, part of me was going, oh, this is going to be really nice, it's going to be nice and comfortable now for a bit. And then I just felt the Holy Spirit say, time to give this up. And I remember banging my head on the desk, literally just going, oh. I was just going, I was like, can I not just have a couple of weeks of being comfortable? And so I then started to do loads of different things because I needed to try and get money in, you know, to be frank. And I was starting a trademark business, I was starting a foot golf business, I was starting an extendable desk business. It was crazy. I was utterly stressed out my head. And I remember my wife came in one day and she said, you know, what are you doing? And I listed off all these things. Oh yeah, global expansion of sports chaplaincy, just threw that one into the mix as well. And she was like, what are you doing? And I went through all the list. And then she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, do you know what? I feel like I ought to be working on Eternal Wall now. I said, but that's not going to bring in any money. And she went, well, none of these are bringing in any money either, are they? And I was like, yeah, good point. And again, I believe that was the limitation of God. That God was restricting me to help me to make the right decision and to go into the right direction. You know, you know, Galatians talks about keeping in step with the Spirit, doesn't it? So for every trial and tribulation in our prayers, I think it's always good to ask God, are we in the right place? Or are we in the right season? Or are we in a change of season where we need to make decisions and move on? So I then began the process, and I'll share with you some really cool answer prayers in a minute, but I want to just sort of, if you like, paint the picture of the process from 2014 to now 2020. And do you know what? It's been a roller coaster. I mean, it has been highs and lows. I remember the day that we were judging the competition, the global competition of architects, and I came away thinking, oh my word, I know what it's going to look like now. Well, I knew of 5 of them, so I know like one of those is what it's going to look like. And I was on a real high, and I phoned my wife and she said, we sort of had all our cards rejected at the supermarket today, we don't have any food. And it's been like that. That's been the journey. I remember walking on the land for the first time, and everyone, the team, are like, oh, this is so cool, we've got this land. And my sort of right hand man whispered in my ear, Rich, we've only got £5 in the bank, we can't pay the salaries. And I'm like, oh, could you not tell me tomorrow, you know? But that's what it's been like. And I have found massive help in Psalm 77 that has helped me through that roller coaster journey. At the beginning it says, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. And when I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. And I have had those moments, just be honest with you. I'd love to tell you that I've skipped through the fields over the last 6 years and it's just been a miracle after miracle. I can honestly tell you there have been times when I've sat in my car and I've beat my fists on the steering wheel of my car and shouted and screamed at God because things weren't happening the way I expected. But what the psalmist does is really interesting and actually has revealed to me why we're doing Eternal Wall. So here's the scripture. To this I will appeal, the years when the Most High stretched out his right hand. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago, and I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. And the psalmist is in a right state, he's got the right hump and the grump, and yet what he does is he recalibrates his mind in his prayers by remembering what God has done, and remembering God's deeds, remembering God's power, remembering God's love, remembering God's grace. He's not twisting God's arm and going, hey God, you've done it then, why not do it now? He's actually changing his mindset and realizing that God can do it again, that God doesn't change, that God is all powerful. And Revelation, I think it's 12, it might be 19, talks about the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. In other words, when we tell the stories of what God has done, we're prophesying for that to happen again. And that for me is the biggest lesson. That when we tell stories, when we say what Jesus has done, we prophesy that he can do it again. We change our mindset and we change our hearts. And it actually transformed the psalmist. Look what he writes later on in Psalm 77. Read Psalm 78. Completely different attitude to God. And that really has been my biggest lesson. So what I'm going to do now is just share with you some quick answered prayer stories that we've had along the journey. So I'm going to, share with you three stories from Eternal Wall, and they're all really in different ways around provision, because that's been our biggest need. I mean, at the start, started with nothing. You know, we launched it on BBC Radio 2 on the Claire Boulding show, Good Morning. And, in my head, I'm like, this is an amazing idea. Why are people not going to want to do this? This is incredible. And by the end of the day, like hardly anybody had got on board. And I was like, what is going on? And we needed to raise 45,000 in 40 days to get this project started. And with 4 days to go, we were 22,500 off. And the way crowdfunding works is you either hit the target and get the money, or you get nothing. And I was so stressed. I mean, I was being sick, I had headaches pounding, and I just felt I've been on national radio talking about collecting 1 million stories. I can't even raise more than 22,500 grand. And I was just grieved that I was going to embarrass God and I'd got it wrong. And so what I did was something that I've never done before, and I don't want to sound super spiritual that I've done it, but I just went to the secret place and I prayed through the night. Never done it before. And I had an encounter with God. I can't really explain it, but what he said to me was, your job is to lead in peace. Stop phoning people, stop emailing people, stop hassling people, just lead in peace. So that's what I did. And with 2 days to go, again praying through the night, and suddenly the money flooded in. It came in from all over the place. It came in from Japan and Croatia and Spain, and you know what had been interesting was in the middle of it, when I was in utter despair in the middle of the 40 days, I'd said to Sarah, you know, oh gosh, what have I done? And Sarah said, I'm going to book the celebration party. Another lesson I've learned: act like when you're seeking for a prayer to be answered, act like you've already received it. Sarah booked the party, invited everybody. They thought she was off her rocker. And so on the day when all the money's like flooding in, I like rushed in. I was like, we're going to do it. And she like looked up and went, yeah, I told you. So that was an incredible thing. In the end, we raised all the money with a day to spare. How mad is that? Then the second thing really is the heavenly land. We call it the heavenly land. We had this amazing journey of getting a land, and here's a video that's going to tell you about it. So there I am, standing in front of Parliament in this reception with MPs, people from the House of Lords, national press, sharing this vision of wanting to build this national landmark. And I have this little voice in my ear going, you haven't got any money in the bank, you haven't got any land, this is a complete fantasy.
I have to say, it's an incredibly ambitious, stunning project. Personally, I'm hoping it, or something like it, can come to pass.
It's got a great simplicity about it, and I'm sure it'll be an iconic structure.
It looks visually very impactful. And I think it's going to inspire a lot of people.
So how do you get land when you've got no money? Well, we prayed. And my wife and I went to a conference at a church in California, and this lady came up to us and she said, I've got a word from God for you.
Yeah, I saw heavenly land being given to you. I don't know if you're actually seeking land, property.
So we went back to my intercessors and I said, hey, look, listen to this word. And one of them, this lady called Sue, said, well, if God's told us that he's got the land already prepared, I'm just going to ask him for some more details.
And so I did. I was brushing my teeth and I was just praying, and it wasn't a particularly holy moment. It was just me talking to God like I talked to him. I just said, tell me something about the land. And as soon as I'd finished saying it, he gave me a word.
And she types the word into Google Maps, and up comes a dental practice. I guess that's God's sense of humour. Above the dental practice is a motorway, and then above that is a piece of land. And Sue circles the piece of land and emails me and says, either this is the land or the person who owns it is highly significant. What she didn't know was one of the family who owned the land had emailed me and asked to meet. So I meet this guy, just share the vision with him, and he's like stony faced. I have no idea whether he likes it or not. And at the end then, he said, of course you know about the trust fund. And I didn't know about the trust fund, I hadn't done my research. But he had actually started a trust fund 6 months before God had given me that vision 15 years ago. And one of the aims of the fund was to start to build a national landmark, which was going to be about Jesus. So he said he'd go away and pray about it. I thought it was pretty obvious that God was in this. And then he came back a few weeks later and said that he prayed about it and he decided to give us some land. So in 2018, he gave us a piece of land, not the one that was circled, but a few miles away. But then for reasons beyond both our control, that land didn't work. And then a few months later, he gave us another piece of land, and again, that one didn't work. And then eventually they employed an architect to look at their portfolio of land and give us the piece that he thought would best suit us. And guess what? It was the land that Sue had circled only 2 years previous. And it is an incredible piece of land. It's in between 2 motorways. It's by HS2, high-speed train that's being built. And it's also in a flight path. We think 500,000 people will go past this monument every week. It's going to be absolutely perfect for the Wall of Answered Prayer. So that's how we've had finance. That's how we've had land. I mean, that's an incredible story, isn't it? And, you know, the learning from me on that is just the timing of God and just being at peace and just knowing that he can do anything, that nothing is beyond him. That land is worth £1.7 million. Amazing. So one of the other areas where God has really blessed us is in the provision of people. And it's just been incredible. You know, when I first was looking to build it and I was driving down the motorway thinking, oh, I can so do this. I was supremely confident. And I felt the Holy Spirit say to me, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea how to even start building this. And then I was like, oh, no, I don't, do I? And then guess what? The meeting I had was with a civil engineer who said, oh, I know how to build this. And he came on board and helped us and volunteered his time. Amazing. I remember standing in a conference and at the start of the conference in my heart going, Lord, I really need somebody to help me on planning. And guess what? In that meeting was a planning barrister. I remember having a dream and waking up in the middle of the night thinking I could really do with somebody to help me on virtual reality, and then speaking at this conference the following day, and this guy ran up to me at the end and went, I didn't know I was here at this conference, but now I know. He said, I've got a virtual reality business, do you need any help with that? I mean, it's mad. And God not only, and this is a really great thing to learn, God has not only provided for the things that I've asked, but what I've learned over the journey is to ask wider prayers. Lord, give me wisdom. Lord, guide me. Lord, give me the provision that I need. Give me the things that are hidden from me that I don't understand. And then he started to bring people to me that I didn't even realise that I needed. And I've been talking to them, and then suddenly a need has arisen, and I'm like, oh, that's why they're there. Had a meeting just this week where sat down with some trustees, and they were like, we really need this sort of construction project manager sort of person. And I was like, okay. And the conversation then came, well, should they be a Christian? And I was like, I really want them to be. It's really important to me. And they were like, look, Rich, you're looking for a needle in a haystack, just trying to find this person. For them to be a Christian, it's like looking for a blue needle in a haystack. 2 days later, I got an email from a guy going, hey, I'm sort of in this organisation of Christians in construction industry and project management, and do you need any help? Amazing. God can provide for all our needs. And when we hear those stories, whether it be for finance, whether it be land or material things, whether it be for people, in your prayers right now, why not grab onto one of those and know that God can do it for you in your situation. If you need finance, he can do it. If you need material things, he can do it. If you need people, he can do it. He is the God who answers. So here's my ask for you now. Because you've listened to some stories, you've listened to why we're doing this. We want to tell the nation of the deeds that God has done. And my dream is that somebody will come to the eternal wall in 100 years or whatever, and they'll put their phone up against a brick or whatever technology we're using in those days, and they'll read a story that helps them discover the God who answers. Now, we want to connect with people from all sorts of walks of life, and so here is my challenge for you. Could they read your story? Could you share your story so that it's remembered for hundreds and hundreds of years what God did in your life? Deuteronomy 4 verse 9 talks about not letting memories fade from our mind or from our hearts, but actually ensuring that we not only remember it, but we share it for the generations. And I want to encourage you, if God has answered a prayer for you, if you have put your hope in Jesus, please, can you share your story with us? Here's the email address. And help us in the heart of this nation make hope visible. That's what we're trying to do. And I hope this has been a helpful talk, ramble. Prayer is a conversation. It's not going to God with a list of wants and a list of needs. Prayer is talking to God and journeying with him and aligning your heart with what he wants to show you through that journey. And when we come to the end, whether it be a yes or a no or a you need to wait, we enjoy that and we share that story as we move on. Help us to make hope visible. Help us to build eternal wall. Help us to tell the nation that Jesus is alive, he listens, and he answers prayer. Thank you.